Welcome to DesignerDigitals Bi-Weekly Tip, May 19th, 2017. This week, Creative Techniques with Filmstrip Frames in Photoshop Part 5. This week's tip is the fifth part in a series on using Katie Perteit's Filmstrip Frames creatively. This series shows you how to think outside the box when you're using a Filmstrip frame set or a template with Filmstrip frames. Using these tips, you'll be able to use the same frame over and over again on different pages, changing the appearance of the frame on each page. Katie Perteit's Filmstrip frames, tag frames, and photo booth frames are a really great buy because they can be changed to create an infinite number of combinations. One way to change the frame is to make them appear to be embossed on the background paper. Bear with me as there are a number of steps from matching the background to highlighting the embossing, but here's how to do it. Open the frame in the full version of Photoshop. For the sample, I'm using Katie Perteit's Stay Here layered template. Open the paper that you want to use as a background and use the Move tool to drag a frame onto the background paper document. But if you're using a template like I am, drag the background paper onto the template and position it right above the template background. So you can see in the Layers panel it's one position above the background. Now Alt-click or on a Mac System Option click on the Layer Visibility icon next to the new background. Don't panic, it's going to hide every layer except the background. Now scroll up to the frame layer and click the Layer Visibility box. You'll want to end up looking at the frame on the background without any of the other layers visible to distract you. I'm going to go ahead and minimize the paper and zoom in a little bit on this frame so that we can see what we're doing. Select the background paper and then press Ctrl-J on your keyboard. This makes a copy of the background paper. So you can see in the Layers panel you'll have your new background and then a copy of that background. Drag the digital paper copy one spot above the frame layer and then press Alt-Control-G or on a Mac System Option Command-G on the keyboard to attach the paper to the frame. The paper will take on the shape of the frame, causing the frame to now melt into the background. Double-click the frame layer somewhere outside of the name to bring up the Layer Styles dialog box. Tick Bevel and Emboss and then click on the title Bevel and Emboss to bring up the options. For the sample, I'm using the following settings, but look, tweak the settings to suit your own project and your own style. This is just what worked for me on this project, and it should give you a starting point. For style, choose Inner Bevel and Technique Smooth. For depth, I'm going to use 250 and direction up. For size, I'm going to change that to 7 and soften 4. For my shading angle, I'm using 120 degrees with an altitude of 30. Use the gloss contour. It's the first one that has this diagonal line. And then highlight mode screen with an opacity of 35%. Shadow mode multiply with an opacity of 55%. Don't close out of the layer styles. Go ahead and tick and select inner shadow. So I'm going to tick it and then select it to get the options. I use the following settings: blend mode multiply, opacity 40%, distance, choke, and size, I'll change all to 5. Without closing out the Layer Styles box, now tick and select Gradient Overlay. In the options, I use the following settings: blend mode normal, opacity 5%, gradient black and white, it's the third one, angle is 120 degrees again, and a scale of 100%. If you move the layer styles over, you can see it working in real time to show you what it's going to look like on your background, and you can make adjustments as you go. I'm happy with these settings, so I'm going to click OK. Next, we're going to create a highlight on the embossing by selecting the frame layer and pressing Ctrl-J or on a Mac System Command-J on the keyboard. This will make a copy of the frame. Drag the bottom frame above the frame and the background paper. Select this new frame copy and press Ctrl-U on the keyboard. Move the lightness slider all the way to the right and click OK. Drag the effects icon down to the trash bin to get rid of all of the layer styles that you had selected before, because you're not going to need them on this highlight layer. Control-click, or on a Mac system command-click, the thumbnail of the new white layer. This will make a selection of marching ants all around that new frame. Move the frame slightly to the right and down by pressing the down arrow about 3 times and the right arrow a couple of times. From the menu bar, choose Select, Modify, Feather, and give it a feather of about 2 or 3 pixels, and click OK. Then make sure that your Filmstrip Frames layer is selected and press Delete on the keyboard. This leaves a highlight on the frame. Press Ctrl-D on a Mac system Command-D to remove the selection, and then reduce the opacity of this layer by dragging the opacity slider down to about 50%. Finally, bring all of the layers back into view by scrolling up to the top layer and clicking the layer visibility icon, and then just scrolling down, taking all of those layers so that they're visible again. Depending on the template you're using, you may want to go ahead and move all of the frame layers down until they rest one position above the background layer. Using this technique gives the frames a completely different look and feel, giving you the flexibility to use them over and over again on different projects. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to check back in 2 weeks for the next Designer Digitals tip.